I have no idea what's going to happen.
Neither do I.
You know what? Let's be honest. I never know what's going to happen. Hi, I'm Maddie.
And I'm Abigail, and this is
Two writers.
Many Wrongs. Two writers, many wrongs. Today we're going to do one of our Back to Basics series, and we are talking about the craft element of setting. I'm actually pretty excited about this because setting is, believe it or not, something that I really struggled to do. And I'm excited to see if you have any insights on how I can start doing it better.
Oh boy, because I'm not good at setting either.
No, really?
I know, which
Oh,
seems
dang.
is it's bad because I write sci-fi, so you think setting would be something I'd be pretty good at.
Well, let's go ahead and start off with why do we think we're bad at setting? So, like for me, I have a tendency to over explain my setting. Like I will set the scene, but I will describe every single little thing, like literally how the house is laid out as a character is walking through it and what the carpet looks like and what the walls look like. And to the point where like when my mom read my first novel, she goes, Abigail, there's a full page just describing this house. And I was like, well, yeah, because if I describe it now, then later when the character goes down the hall to the second bedroom, they won't be confused. She's like, no one's going to be confused by that. Nobody's going to give a shit. Um, so that's why I really struggle with setting is I get way too into the weeds.
Okay, well, not to be devil's advocate here, but I don't necessarily think that's a problem because I think different authors have different styles, and like some people are really into like reading a lot about the setting and the real details of it.
I mean, if I was Pat Conroy and I was describing like the gorgeous South Carolina sunsets, then yeah, sure. But describing a suburban house in Jacksonville, I don't need a page to describe that. I
That's fair.
really
That's
don't.
fair. I have the opposite problem.
Oh, okay.
I'm very bad at setting the scene of like telling you where you are. I remember when I
Mm.
was in grad school, no, when I was an undergrad, my first mentor, every time I'd get my papers back, there'd just be question marks. Where are we? Where? Where is this
Yeah.
happening? Where?
Hmm.
Question mark? Just and that was like I was writing just regular fiction at that point. I wasn't even writing sci-fi. So like she's like, I
Oh
have
my
no idea. She's
God.
like, there's just two people talking in a void. I don't know where we
Yeah.
are.
I tell my students all the time, I'm like, you can't let us float in the white space. Like I need to be grounded in some way, somewhere along the line.
You know, I loved my screenwriting class
Hmm.
because you wrote dialogue, you wrote direction, and then for setting, you wrote beach. It was beautiful. I loved that. I wish I could do that in my novel. Be like
Yeah.
beach,
Yeah. Except it would be spaceship.
spaceship. Well, I
Yeah.
mean,
Planet.
planet. Well, beaches, there's a beach on my planet.
Okay, that's
There's
fine.
beaches on planets. It's an
Yeah.
alien beach. What does it look like? I don't know. Well, actually, I do know that's the problem.
Yeah.
I have I have trouble
Mhm.
putting it into words.
Yeah. I think one of my problems is I know this is really dumb. I get worried that my readers are going to fact check me, which like nobody does. Nobody gives a shit. But, I lived in Jacksonville for 2 years, and that's where my first novel is set. And before I started writing the novel before I ever lived there and set it in Jacksonville and whatever. And then after I lived there, I was like, oh, I can start writing down some like street names and like some places that people would actually maybe know. But now it's like, well, now I'm afraid that whoever lives in Jacksonville is going to be like, oh no, well, that street's actually not next to this street. Or, oh, well, there's not actually a Starbucks on that corner. And like, they're not going to. Nobody's going to give a shit. But I get so worried about the accuracy of the setting. And I don't know if it's because I'm writing realistic fiction with like real places. Do you, I mean, not accuracy necessarily, but do you ever feel that way with your sci-fi settings?
Well, because not necessarily. I mean, there is accuracy involved because
Hmm.
I'm afraid of. I've actually because that's the type of person I've actually run like planetary simulations to see if like the way I have my planet's system set up, if the way I've set up the weather would work that way.
You're so cute.
Found out that it doesn't quite work that way, but
Mm.
there it's works enough if I moved it in a certain way that like so like I'm afraid of
Hmm.
like the scientists coming after me and be like, that's not
Yeah.
accurate, which I don't
Hmm.
think they would do.
Yeah, but there is a big movement, not a big movement. I don't know. You obviously know more than I do about the sci-fi realm, but I feel like there are people like Andy Weir who he's an incredible writer, don't get me wrong, but so much of his praise comes from how grounded in reality and how realistic his writing is that I feel like people really hold him above everybody else because of that, not just because he's an amazing storyteller.
Right. But so there's like an aspect of wanting to be scientifically accurate, or
Hmm.
my story is never going to be scientifically accurate.
Yeah.
It's not the type of story it is.
Hmm.
But I am interested enough in science that like I want to kind of play into those
Hmm.
scientific concepts where I can. But it's fiction at the end of the day, and trying to let
Right.
that go. Like it doesn't quite fit, but this
Hmm.
particular thing fits better with my story. It's
Yeah.
okay. It's
Yeah.
just okay. And having to let that go, because I also have to remind myself that like something that gets lambasted a lot for being very scientifically inaccurate and just a lot of
Hmm.
like pseudoscience mumbo jumbo kind of stuff is Star
Hmm.
Trek. And
Yeah.
Star Trek has had a profound influence on the science community and inspired many
Hmm.
scientists, and it wasn't scientifically accurate.
Right. Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be. Like
Yeah.
it's not like I'm alienating all the scientists because my planet's axis, the way it rotates on its
Yeah.
axis doesn't make sense with the seasonal patterns I have.
How could you have a binary star system? What?
I do have a binary star system.
Because they're the coolest. Duh. Um, no, I think that's really interesting though that both of us are so concerned about our audience when it comes to setting. And I think that part of it also for me is the way that I see setting functioning within a story. And for me, everything that I do, every word a character says, every gesture that they do, every setting that they walk into, I want to reflect something about them.
Hmm.
And so when I spent so much time describing the suburban home, I talk about the family pictures on the wall that haven't been changed in 3 years because that says something about the family and about the characters,
Right.
but also it doesn't matter. And so like I want the setting to function as an insight into the character so that I really can do less legwork explaining. Like that's my way of trying to show who these people are. How do you see setting functioning within your story?
Definitely, in some places, it is representative of the characters
Hmm.
and their moods or the kind of place where they're at. That's really important. That's something I think about with the way the setting is. Like, for instance, there's one character who's staying in the palace,
Hmm.
and his room is described very differently than another character who's also staying in the palace because of the way he perceives life and the way he is as a person. And
Okay.
so, though they're like very similar rooms, they're colored by the person that is
Hmm.
observing them. So there's that aspect of it. But also, setting can be a really great way of world building. I can say
Hmm.
things without saying too much about like the society and the way that they live based on the way I've built different things. Like something I
Hmm.
wanted to think about, I don't know if this is like too much, but like the architecture,
Uh-huh.
I wanted it to look like this is
Hmm.
what the society, like be in
Yeah.
conversation, the type of society I'm making.
Nice. I love that idea of especially, you can do that in a sci-fi fantasy world, having it reflect the people who live there because, when you think about Lord of the Rings, every location is so completely different and is so reflective of the people who live there, you know? I mean, Rivendell is a vibe. Like that is an amazing magical place that only elves can live.
Mhm.
So I love that you're talking about the architecture of a place reflecting the society. I think since I write in the real world, I don't really get a chance to think about that. So that's a really cool way that setting can function.
Yeah, and I think too, like the thing with setting and accuracy and stuff like that is I
Mhm.
like to do research to like, because obviously I'm writing an alien world,
Right.
but there is so many different types of cultures here
Hmm.
on Earth and different mythologies that I lean into and I research and like look at what inspires the art and architecture of a society. All are completely different based on their belief systems. And so
Hmm.
I think that kind of makes setting hard in a way because it's so open-ended.
Yeah.
And when you spend so much time talking about a specific place because it builds on this character and builds into the world that you're building, sometimes it's like you just want to do a scene over here, but now it's
Hmm.
like, oh, well, now I got to explain everything that's happening in this place. Like, what does the
Yeah.
spaceship look like?
Hmm. Yeah. How do you deal with like differentiating all the different locations in your kind of sci-fi world? Because again, just thinking back to Lord of the Rings or like Star Wars specifically, every single planet is so differently designed and differently shaped. And, you think about the deserts of Tatooine versus like freaking Coruscant,
Hmm.
like how do you always just think of the society or do you think of like what you need the character to go through? Like, how do you decide on the setting?
I mean, for me, it's kind of a bit of both. Like it can, or either or, it can come from one place or
Okay.
the other. The book that I'm writing now is very focused on a very particular society, and so I
Hmm.
was able to really delve in and focus on this one planet.
Cool.
And then there's another planet in the story that's like much smaller, and so there wasn't really as much to describe there. But there's other places that I knew that they came from another place, but I wasn't really
Hmm.
sure what that place looked like. And that character kind of informed, because I thought about this character and I was like, what kind of upbringing
Hmm.
would a character like this have? What kind of
Right.
belief systems would they have had growing up like this? And then that kind of backtrack led to what kind of society made
Hmm.
this kind of planet. But sometimes I just have stuff that like I have like a concept of what I want,
Hmm.
and then the people come out of that.
Yeah, nice. I'm trying to think, again, even though it's set in Jacksonville, we have like the main suburban house, which is the people in my story are trying to become a part of like an upper tier economically. And so they have fixtures in their house that like they want to be nicer, but they're just not. And then there's the best friend's house, which is like one of those McMansions. Everything is white because of course neutral colors are for the rich and that's
Great.
very trendy right now and all kinds of stuff. And so like I do try to use setting to juxtapose different characters too. And I love placing my characters into a setting where they are uncomfortable. So like my main character and her son go over to their best friend's house where everything's white, white couch, white carpet, white whatever. And her kid is eating Cheetos. And of course, the mom who lives there, her son's eating Cheetos on the couch and it's no big deal, whatever else. And my main character is so uncomfortable and is like, don't eat Cheetos on the white couch. And of course, the person who owns the place is like, they're fine. So I do think that setting can do a really great job of creating tension as well in your
Mm.
characters when you put them in a place that they've never been before. One of
It's
my
really
like,
interesting though, because like there's also that aspect of like her idea of what it means to own a white couch is different than this lady's who's like, oh, I'll
yes.
just get it professionally cleaned this weekend.
Exactly the case. Yeah, no. So I mean, it really does not just reflect who the character is, but it can be a great source of tension to place a character in a setting that they have never been before, or even placing characters in a setting to help move the plot forward, like the way you act in a doctor's office versus the way you act in a McDonald's drive-through. Like
Mhm.
those are all settings where you have to interact with a stranger and it reveals something about you.
Yeah. I love I love to write from different perspectives because one of the things I'd love to do is to show people in the same setting,
Mm-hmm.
but seeing it in a different way. They're
Ooh,
picking up
yeah.
different things about it because, like
Hmm.
one of my characters he's an anthropologist
Hmm.
and a historian. And so whenever he goes in a place, he's thinking about the history and the way, like, oh, this was constructed this century by this
Hmm.
queen, and that's representative of the mythology here. And he's picking
That's
up all of
cute.
that. Whereas like other people are like, it's a ball in a palace. They're like, whoa, it's so ornate and so fancy. I
Hmm.
wonder how much that cost. And then there's
Yeah.
somebody who's like, this is my home. I live here. I don't like,
Right. Yeah, I don't
I
really
want to
think
use
about
this
it.
room, whatever. But kind of like showing how different people might see
Hmm.
the same room because you'll pick up on different details because of what
Yeah.
in your personality makes you notice something.
I love
I think
that.
it's really fascinating.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about how setting can function, but I kind of want to transition a little bit into how do we establish setting. And I have my lecture pulled up from when I teach my creative writing classes, and I give them four different ways that setting can be established, so or can be revealed. So we have the establishing shot, and the example that I give them is I always think of Wes Anderson. Like he always does that big establishing shot, and
Yeah.
then we'll kind of start the scene, which is what I feel like I tend to do. Like I want to get all the details out first, but sometimes it can be kind of overwhelming when you're reading it instead of seeing it visually. Then we talk about the slow reveal, which is, starting in on an object and then zooming out to reveal the greater setting. The use of senses, using one of the five senses to initiate the curiosity about the setting around a character. And then the idea of universal versus local or universal to local. So an object that might seem really common, but making it unique within the situation. So there could be a chair, but describing that chair specifically can make it more specific. So is there one that you feel like you tend to use or enjoy more than others?
I'm trying to think because I feel like most of the time when I'm talking about setting, when I actually make myself do setting, um it's like a slow drip of like a character
Hmm.
making observations while they're doing something or talking.
Yes, I love revealing setting through gesture.
But like, so the character walks into the room, he says
Hmm.
something, and then he notices this thing over here, and then he
Hmm.
walks over here and he starts noticing these things over here.
Hmm.
I feel like I have tried like doing the like big
Establishing shot.
establishing shot kind of thing. I think that's kind of
Hmm.
how I open up my novel.
Hmm.
Is more like that, just like that establishing
Yeah.
shot of all of these dignitaries and politicians walking into a ball.
And then it explodes. No, I have no idea. No, I think that that's interesting to talk about. The beginning of your book is the establishing shot, and then different rooms can be revealed in different ways. I think that I write setting the most or maybe the best when I'm using it to break up dialogue. Because I always want my characters interacting with something around them. So I do tend to do she asked while taking a drink of water or something, whatever. But instead, I'll really try to focus it of like as she sat on the scratchy couch or, to do something in there. So I definitely use the senses, but I don't know that I use them to establish the setting. I think that I do more of like a slow reveal with dialogue. So it's always
Mhm.
harder when it's just a character walking into a room by themselves. That's when I think I get caught up the most in too much detail.
Yeah, I think I try when I think it's important, when the setting is telling you something that's important about the story,
Hmm.
I think I like to spend a little bit more time there so that
Hmm.
like I think for me, I like to spend as little time doing dialogue, I mean setting as possible.
Hmm.
But there are times when I like let it go for a while, and it's only those times are like, this is really important that you
Yeah.
notice the setting. But
Hmm.
otherwise, I try to keep the setting kind of vague unless there's details that are important to reveal lore or they
Right.
reveal about the character. Because for me, I don't care about setting, and I've been very bad about
Hmm.
like when I see when I see somebody like describing setting, my eyes glaze over and I kind of skim to like, okay,
See, it
this
is a
is what.
weakness. People skim.
Because like I just don't well like it's just for me,
Yeah.
but I know like people they're like, oh, I loved like every detail of this, like where the
Hmm.
tree was and the lighting
Yeah.
and so but for me I'm not really interested in it.
Hmm.
So, I try to follow that instinct of
Yeah.
if I'm not interested in it, then I'm not gonna write it.
When you read, do you picture what's going on? Like, do you see it in your imagination?
Yeah.
Okay. I do too, but everything's a little bit hazy, a little bit fuzzy. It's kind of like being in a dream where I'm like, I know the character's a girl. I think maybe she has brown hair, but like I don't really pay that close attention to it. Um, but the setting I remember more. And like the setting, I think I establish more in my brain, which I think
Mhm.
is why I write towards it. Because I love describing the internal goings on of a character. I'm terrible at describing what a character looks like. I find it's always clunky. They're always looking in a mirror or like thinking about themselves in some way, or like another character has to like say something to them, because I tend to write in first person, and I hate describing a character and what they look like, and I think that that's maybe why I'm more confident in describing a setting and maybe go overboard describing a setting.
I think I'm probably the opposite. Like I
Hmm.
can picture the character more clearly,
Hmm.
but I can't picture the setting as clearly. Or that's not necessarily as clearly. It's just I make up my own setting.
Yeah, see,
I'm
and
like,
I
it's on a
didn't.
spaceship. I make up what it looks like. And then they're like, the bulkheads are green. And I'm like, no, they aren't.
Yeah, no, see, and like I'm thinking about some of my favorite books, and like I can picture like, oh, they're in a forest and they cross the stream and they go up this hill and blah blah blah, whatever else. What were they wearing? I don't know. What color is their skin? I don't know. Didn't pay attention to it at all. Um,
It's like some
yeah.
sort of person-shaped blob going
Yeah.
through the
Yeah.
forest. Yeah.
I know that the person is honest. I know that they're caring. I know that they're adventurous. What else do I need, you know? And I think that maybe that's why with setting, I go a little bit overboard. I mean, even the opening to my novel, because I did the same thing. I used an establishing shot to open the novel, which I think is a really common approach to a novel opening because we want to get our readers grounded as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
But even that, I had to like cut back a ton so that I could actually get to the story.
Yeah, I mean something I've actually whenever I do my reading at night,
Hmm.
I'm always reading the book whenever there's setting, I really slow down and I'm like, how long are we spending here? Because I need data. How many
Uh-huh.
sentences of setting do I
Hmm.
have to do and
Hmm.
how often? And just kind of taking those kind of things into consideration. And also just noting that every single author is different.
I know.
And
Well, and that's always the takeaway from this podcast is like, whatever works for you. But
but
it's
also
stupidly
like
true.
it, unfortunately, I mean, no, fortunately, that's true because there's just different writers who are known for different things.
Yeah. I mean, truly, I
Yeah,
mean, Pat Conroy is one of my favorite authors, and his setting descriptions are lyrical in their writing. Like I wish that I could write the way that he does when it comes to setting, but it's just not my style, unfortunately. And
yeah.
when I do, it sounds faulty and pretentious.
I think that's key though. Like, if you're writing it and it doesn't feel
Hmm.
it feels false, then I
Yeah.
think your readers will pick up on that too. Like they'll feel that it's
Hmm.
inauthentic. And I think at the end of the day, it's better to do what it makes sense for you as a writer that you are capable of doing than trying to
Hmm.
force something that's not
Yeah.
there.
And I think one of the ways that has helped me edit a little bit better when it comes to writing setting is I like to draw out like a schematic of the house that I'm in. And so I have forced myself, like, stop describing the whole thing. And as I'm writing the characters in scene, we'll like drop little things here and there, and then have my beta readers read it and be like, "Does this make sense?" Because I can always add more,
Yeah.
and it's so much easier to add more than it is to try to delete. The act of writing is the joyous part. The act of editing crushes your soul a little bit. So I've kind of tried to frame it as like I can always add more. I don't want to have to take away.
Yeah, I think I always sketch my stuff that
Hmm.
like the things that are very the things that visually I see very vividly in my head in my
Hmm.
novel. Those are the things I sketch out. And then when I'm writing a scene, I like to ask myself, what's important in this scene?
Yeah.
And so and if this is important in this scene, I like to ask myself what's important on this piece of paper of this sketch,
Hmm.
what's important that they see.
Hmm.
Because, readers, when you're reading, you're filling in the blanks a lot with
Yeah.
you're reading in between the lines.
Hmm.
And although I joke about you can't just write beach, you can
Right.
like spend like a line or two describing that they're at a beach and people can
Hmm.
fill in the details. And
Yeah.
that's okay. Like, does it
Hmm.
really matter that there's a dune over here
Right. Yes.
and ferns over here? Not
Hmm.
necessarily.
Yeah.
They don't have to see exactly what you're seeing. It just,
Hmm.
they need to see the important parts. You're picking, it's like a camera where you're like
Yeah.
lining up the shot and you're just
Hmm.
showing them this thing that needs to be shown. And it has to, in my opinion, have a
Hmm.
reason for being there.
Yeah. I like that. I like the idea a lot of like what is most important for them to know. Because you're right. If I say that they have a TV stand, it doesn't matter if it's, wood or painted or, d
Unless it
tall or
is.
short or whatever. Right. Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, that's a really good point. I like that idea of like, doesn't matter. I also think that just you talking about that also made me kind of think about when we're writing setting, I feel like a lot of foreshadowing lives in a setting, especially depending on what you choose to mention. When we think
Mhm.
about the storytelling device of Chekhov's gun, the only reason that we know it is because Chekhov describes there is a gun on the table. So the back of the reader's mind is like, that gun is still sitting over there. And I think that that's something that I maybe get too bogged down in is I always kind of want to be like, okay, well, maybe I could bring this back. But at some point it becomes distracting. So
Mhm.
trying to really reframe it as like, what is actually important? What am I actually going to be going back to?
Yeah. And I think setting can tell you a lot about like the type of story that you're telling because
Hmm.
setting in itself can tell you a lot. You're on an alien planet, you're reading sci-fi.
Right. Yeah.
You're in a kingdom with elves
Hmm.
and ogres and stuff, and you're
Hmm.
reading fantasy. So that's another thing. It can set the tone for the type of story that you're going to tell.
Hmm.
And you can tell things that you don't want your character to observe or
Hmm.
say, but something you want the readers to be aware of. Because I think that can create some good dramatic irony. Like you said, something
Hmm.
like a gun on a table. Maybe they
Right.
don't see it, but you
Yeah.
describe it as they're like walking past.
Yeah. I like that idea of you talked about dramatic irony because I think that there's something to be said to I feel like there's a whole subgenre of setting that's just about the weather. Because having a character, crying in the rain versus crying on like a perfect, beautiful sunny day, it says a lot about the tone of your book and like the place that the character's in. There's in my original draft, I wrote my book set in podunk nowheresville up north that I was like, oh, I can just do an imaginary town and like not worry about it. And so now since I've edited it, there are still traces of like the cold autumn breeze. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't exist in Jacksonville. There is no cold autumn breeze. And, trying to remember like setting the tone just through the weather of the novel is a huge I think burden, honestly, when it comes to setting. Like I hate talking about the weather.
Well, it's also like because you don't want to be like it was a dark and stormy night. Then
Exactly.
that just it becomes cliche.
Cliche.
So you don't you have to be kind of light-handed with the weather.
Hmm. Yeah.
I think because it can be kind of like, oh, like they're sad and it's crying. Okay, like
Right.
whatever.
Yeah,
They're sad and
exactly.
crying and it's raining outside, and that just feels a little much. But
Hmm.
maybe it is raining outside. I don't
Yeah.
know, but like
Right.
I think you could have a character crying while it's raining outside, but I think you need to
Mhm.
establish it's raining outside before they're crying.
Right. Well, and I think it's one of those things that like you talked about isn't important because the hard part is default setting in people's brains is going to be sunny. Like just default weather is just going to be typical normal sunny day. And does that matter? Does it not matter? And I think that that's, the same thing that you were talking about of, but is it important? How does it reflect on the character? How does it reflect on the scene? And are you going to ever come back to it? Or can we just let them see the character crying and not think too much about the weather?
Yeah, I think that's, you don't want to use it heavy-handed, but
Yeah.
I think you could use it maybe as some foreshadowing, like
Yeah.
that it starts to rain a little bit, but like have it like kind of drizzle it in. Like you start the scene, they notice that it's kind of cloudy out,
Yeah, right.
and then you go on with the scene, you don't really talk about it, and then like you hear rain. So it is raining, but it's not like, and it started to pour as I
No way.
cried, you
The
know.
first raindrop on their face, they're not sure if it's actually a tear from their eye.
Yeah, like you don't have to do all that. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
can set up
exactly.
that scene if you really want a
Hmm.
character crying in the
Yeah.
rain, make it
But
rain before they're crying.
well, and not only that, or use it as something really important. Like thinking back to, I have no idea if you're gonna know this or give a shit about it, but Cinderella story with Hilary Duff, yes? You kill me. So, Cinderella story, there is a drought taking place in California. And when there's like the big dramatic romantic moment where she like tells the guy off and says to him, waiting for you is like waiting for rain in this drought, pointless. And then, of course, when he actually comes around, it starts pouring rain. And it's a very emotionally relevant moment, and they tied it together. And it's cliche. It's, a Hilary Duff teen movie, like whatever. But the use of setting in that helps elevate the emotions of the scene so much more and makes it more poignant.
But it
And
is still cliche.
it's
But
so cliche, but it
but
works for that
it still
genre.
works. Exactly. I think you need to remember what genre you're into when you're writing
Yes.
because
Yes.
if you're writing serious literary fiction,
Hmm.
that wouldn't work. That would break you out of that. But
It'd be
writing
so
like a
cheesy.
romantic movie that's kind of
Hmm.
cheesy, that
Yeah.
fits.
Yeah.
But I also think that just in general, unless you're intentionally writing something cheesy, I would say
Hmm.
like don't make the weather react to your characters.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that goes for setting in general. Don't make the setting react to your character because have somebody be really angry in a room that's painted red is just as cliche, you know?
Mm.
So I like that idea of it's such a hard balance having the setting reflect your character, but not having it react to your character. And the more that we're talking about this, the more I'm kind of realizing that setting really is like makeup in that like you want to make it appropriate for the occasion and you can't overdo it. Like you don't want to look like a clown by putting on too much makeup. Like it's a tool that you use. And I feel like the same way about setting is
Yeah,
it is as effective what's there as it is what's not there.
right. I also think something that came up while you were talking is the character um, sees stuff in the setting that's reflective of them, but the setting
Hmm.
doesn't reflect your character.
Yeah. Because
Like
each character should notice something different in that room, like you were talking about earlier.
yeah, your character isn't, the room isn't reacting to your character, isn't a
Hmm.
certain way because of your character. The
Hmm.
room appears to be a certain way because of
Hmm.
your character. Like, I don't know if you've read The Yellow Wallpaper.
Oh, I love The Yellow Wallpaper. It's one of my favorite short stories. It's so terrifying, but it's so
I
good.
actually have like a copy of it. It's like this big.
Aw, yeah.
Um,
I
but
always
like
teach at my creative writing classes.
that is such a great use of
Hmm.
setting
Yes.
because she's seeing this yellow wallpaper and she's
Hmm.
seeing stuff in it,
Hmm.
but it's not the wallpaper.
Hmm.
She's seeing it. And I
Yeah.
think that that is kind of a reminder of how setting should work is it's what is your
Hmm.
character seeing in the setting? Because it's just an extension of the
Hmm.
story itself.
Yeah. Well, and that talking about that makes me think of like a bottle episode of a TV show because the yellow wallpaper is so wonderfully effective because it does take place all in one setting. And when, that's the great thing about bottle episodes in television is they all take place in one room or in one setting. And so you really have to find a way to play with that setting to make it last the whole story to be interactive, to continue to reveal itself to different characters in different ways. I have a short story that I wrote that it's a series of vignettes, and all of them take place inside of a minivan. And it's a mother and a son on like a road trip, basically. But I use the concept of a bottle episode to do it, and it shows like over time, the scuff marks on the dashboard and like the crumbs worked into the seat, and to reveal that, but writing in one setting was really fucking hard.
Yeah, I attempted to do a bottle episode type of, that was my inspiration, was a bottle episode.
Hmm.
But I had a lot of trouble with it. Like it wasn't interesting enough. And I think the problem I had was I didn't focus enough on the setting itself.
Hmm. Yeah.
My whole thing was like, okay, what would happen if all these people were in a room? And I just worked on like the
Hmm.
dialogue and like the tension. And I just completely neglected the room. I mean, I had described it, but like
Yeah.
I didn't use it in that way. So I
Right.
think that's really
Exactly.
interesting. I'd like to take another crack at that story.
Yeah. Well, and it's also, so one of my favorite bottle episodes is from the TV show Community. And it takes place in the study room where they've, lived in it for so long. So it's a setting that we're so intimately familiar with, and yet they still find ways to make it kind of new and interesting and bizarre and like turn it upside down and
Nobody
kind
took
of
her pen.
a monkey took her pen. She's
I
not
know.
crazy.
I know. Um,
The pen is missing.
I know, but nobody in there took her pen.
Yeah, but she doesn't know that. Um, but
Annie's
just I
boobs took them.
I know Annie's Bruce took the pen. God, I love Community. I need to rewatch it. But I just, I really like the way that the room works around it. Um, I don't know. I think the more I think about setting, the more dynamic it becomes as a tool in writing, I think.
Yeah, I think it helps to talk about it because it gets me excited to do
Hmm.
setting because I've done there's very vivid scenes that are really important to me that I really describe them and spend time describing them. And I worked really hard on those scenes. And like
Hmm.
now that I've go back and I'll read them, I'm very proud of those scenes. It's just I struggle with setting because it doesn't come naturally to me. But
Hmm.
when I feel inclined to do it, I think I can make it work.
Yeah. Are you a really observant person, like in your day-to-day life?
Uh, so, it depends sometimes.
Okay.
Are you?
Yeah, I tend to be a pretty observant person, like especially walking into like somebody's house or something like that.
Oh God.
I really like just looking around. Well, I think it's because it's the way that I set up my house. Like I want to invite people to look at my bookshelves or look at the pictures on the walls or look at, kind of thing. So I tend to do that in other people's houses to see what's revealed about them. But it's the same thing of like, I will notice. Like I'll come home and be like, "Oh, Michael, thank you for doing the dishes or like cleaning out the fridge." And he's like, "How do you know I cleaned out the fridge?" I'm like, "Oh, because all the dishes are on the counter cleaned, so I knew what was in the refrigerator and what containers they were in, and kind of thing." Whereas like I have literally hung up pictures on the wall, and Michael's been like, "How long has that picture been there?" I'm like, "2 weeks. It's been there 2 weeks." You know? So there, I ask because, again, talking about settings, since I tend to overdo it, it might be because I am more observant about that in like my real life. I also think that I can maybe try to reveal too much about my character. Like, does it really matter that the corner of the bathtub is, or, corner outside the bathtub is gross?
I
No,
think
it does reveal, but like, I don't need it.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
I would say something that I've been doing lately, as far as like scenes and characters, is writing
Hmm.
down what do I need people to know? What do
Hmm.
I need them to learn? And how am I going to show that? And
Hmm.
so writing those questions down can kind of help you determine whether or not you talk about that dirty spot. It's like I need them to
Yeah.
know that she's tired, but she wants to have like a perfectly clean house, but she also
Mm.
knows it's not a priority, but it
Yeah.
does continue to nag at her.
Yeah.
And if that's one, like I would say, like for most characters, you're going to want to show that particular side of
Hmm.
them at least 3 or 4 times in different
Hmm.
ways.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
you're like every scene, there's something like that, or you
Right.
talk about a different dirty area, I think that would be one way to show that. And
Hmm.
then you have a different way you show it. So I think ask yourself, is this relevant to the character, or am I going a little too detailed in with this?
Right. Are you being too heavy-handed with it? I think is a good way to think of it too. I do want to ask, like, do you have an aspect of a setting that is like one of your favorite things? So, I ask this because in my first novel, the main character is pretty high strung. And one of the things that she does is it's actually something that my mom used to do when we were really young. And she has five different clear jars, and she'll buy boxes of spree candy and sort them by color into the different jars. And those are in the living room. So anybody who walks by can just be like, oh, I'm going to grab some red sprees and like grab a handful and whatever. And it's something that my mom did that I always thought like that is such an interesting character trait.
Hmm.
And eventually in the novel, her son knocks it over and there's just a rainbow of sprees on the floor, you know? But like that is one of my favorite things that I've ever written. And I didn't even come up with it. Like it literally was stolen from my mother. But I think that might be one of my favorite setting pieces that I ever wrote. Do you have something like that?
I don't know that I do. Uh,
Or any setting that you really loved writing about?
I love the ballroom. The
Mm.
first third of my novel takes place in this ballroom, but I remember there's several influences I've had in real life. One of them is I don't know if you've ever been to the Ringling Museum in Sarasota.
Mm-mm.
Well, the Ringlings, they have their house there, so you can
Oh.
tour that too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a the dining like the dance room, dining hall, whatever it
Mm-hmm.
was, um, has like little paintings on the ceiling, which I always thought was so cool.
Oh,
Like little
cool.
squares, like a bunch of little squares with like
Mm-hmm.
people dancing in them
Mm-hmm.
and all painted. And I thought that was so cool. And so I have that and also the castle in Dublin.
Mm-hmm.
Dublin, I think it's Dublin Castle. I
Mm-hmm.
went in there, we walked up to it, and I was like kind of a bit starstruck when I saw it because it was very similar to what I had imagined
Aw.
the palace in my story to look like.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it was different, but like there
Right.
was so many aspects of it that were very similar, and I took so many pictures.
Mm.
And so I refer to those pictures a lot when I'm
Yeah.
describing my ballroom because um, I there's a lot of like that regal elegance of it being a castle, but like
Mm-hmm.
just the seeing the little intricate details of existing architecture. I've always been really
Mm-hmm.
interested in art and architecture, and so having the opportunity to look at real life architecture and just kind of imagine what it might look like with my lore is something
Yeah.
that I really enjoy.
Nice. I love that. I think one of the things that's hard about setting is because I am such a like TV movie person, I always think of it as very cinematic when writing it and when describing it. And that can be helpful at times, but I think it can also be a hindrance sometimes. So, like thinking about this ballroom, I can just picture the sweeping camera shot or like a dolly pull, like to reveal the whole thing, you know? But how you take that and put it into words is always such a challenge, you know?
I mean, the ballroom is something I mean, I have many like images of the castle and the
Hmm.
palace, but the ballroom is something I've had to draw from multiple angles because it's a big
Hmm.
room
Yeah.
and just like completely different things you're seeing and over here and over here. And I think um I had to like break it up into little pieces to like be
Hmm.
able to describe this particular area and this particular area because they are all very different.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really
But
interesting.
I loved that's something I really love is doing sketches and art for
Hmm.
setting because it helps you visualize things that I wasn't able to visualize before. Like kind of helps
Hmm.
like take the thing out of your brain and put it on paper. And I think it's a lot
Yeah.
easier for me to describe when I'm like looking at something and being like, I can
Hmm.
literally describe this instead of
Yeah.
being like, I don't know, like it's a ballroom.
Right.
You've
I
seen a
think
ballroom.
because I also I suck at drawing. Like it is so not a strong suit for me. And so I think that I wish that was something that I was gifted with.
I'm not.
Well, okay, but you are a lot better at art than anything I could ever do, you know? And it's something that you continue to practice and persist at. So like you get better every time, you know? Um, but I think that's one of those things that, and I don't want to get into this too much because I think it's a whole different conversation. But it's one of those things I can understand why people use AI generated images. I am pretty anti-AI for the most part, just as far as like the environmental effects that it causes. Um,
Oh boy.
but right, exactly. But that's one of the few places that I could maybe understand somebody trying to use AI to help create a visual for either a setting or a character or something like that. Is one of the only places I think I could maybe like, okay, I could understand using that as a tool, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea and potential of AI, and I'm not going to get into that. But
Hmm.
um, yeah, I mean, I think it'd be a cool tool to be able to like put your imagination into
Hmm.
pictures. But
Yeah.
my, I
Hmm.
tried to like, I tried to do like a cover for my novel, and I'm like, I want it to
Hmm.
look like this, and it just,
Yeah.
I have nightmares about some of the images I created. They're so bad.
Well, and I think that that's one of I mean, that was one of my favorite things talking to Taylor Simmons and Paige LaVoe about their books is them paying specific artists to create character sketches or to create covers or to create whatever. And like, you really, there is no better option than paying a local artist to,
Right.
or you know, some kind of
But
artist to do that. But I'm not going to have them do that for every scene in my book so
right,
that I can then
exactly. So
describe
that's
it.
getting back to the point is
Exactly.
AI to like generate a little scene to kind of help you
Uh-huh.
visualize something. I can understand that,
Exactly. Yep.
but it's not going to look right.
Mm-mm.
It's
No.
and it's, you
Yeah.
know, ethically questionable.
Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
can't sketch, it's kind it can be kind of frustrating, but I
Hmm.
say that if you can't sketch, then I would say do some research of what might be
Hmm.
similar. Like again, like
Yep.
I went to like castles and stuff to take
Hmm.
pictures and see like how are these rooms designed? And even if you
Yep.
can't like physically go to a castle,
You can Google.
I went to one castle and then like
Yeah.
watched documentaries about castles
Hmm.
and watched them do tours, looked at floor plans, and
Exactly.
all of that kind of stuff. You can,
Yep.
there are plenty of images that can, you can like put,
Hmm.
basically what I would do is I would take like this castle, this castle, this
Hmm.
castle, and then I try and combine these things together
Hmm.
and take elements from them to make
Yeah.
my own.
Yeah.
But you can borrow from something like that when you can't
Yeah.
draw.
Well, and even going further than that too, like if you're really stuck on the setting or something, like especially for people who write sci-fi or historical fiction or something that is going to take a little bit more creativity, a little bit more research, fucking librarians are incredible, and all they want to do is help people. All they want to do is like answer questions, you know? Like having the librarian at Rollins come into my classroom, like I'm constantly asking him questions, and he freaking loves to sit there and talk about stuff. Go to the library, say, I'm writing a story and I want to see pictures of castles. Can you help me? And they will, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Utilize your local library.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
protect our public spaces. It's our last free third place.
Hmm.
Please
Yes,
protect
it
it.
is. Yeah.
There's so many cool resources.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
go check out
But
your
I
local
just,
library.
yeah. Well, and again, getting back to the point of setting, like sometimes setting does take research, you know, and making sure that you are, if you, like I said, if you can't go and travel there, then trying to do some basic research is important because while your readers probably won't be back and fact checking you, it is going to make it feel more real to them. They can sense when you're just making shit up versus when you've actually put thought and effort into it.
Right. Like Kristen Harmel.
Hmm.
She couldn't go to that forest literally, but she found a
Yeah.
guy who like tours in that forest and knows like the back of
Yep.
his hand to read it and to like
Exactly.
tell her like, oh no, that mushroom wouldn't be there this
Hmm.
time of year. I love that.
Exactly. I know. It's
Love
so
that.
good. Yeah. Yep. All right. Anything else about setting that you want to talk about? Because at this point, I want to go back and rewrite half of my novel for the setting aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, It's funny because I started off saying like I'm not very good at setting, but as I'm like talking, I'm thinking about where I've used
Mhm.
setting in my novel, and I stand by that. Like
Yeah.
I don't always dwell in setting, but when I do, they're
Hmm.
like I'm setting up something really important.
Hmm.
And it's not that I don't do setting, it's just I don't
Hmm.
spend a lot of time in setting if I don't feel like it's necessary.
Hmm.
Because like these two characters are talking in a room. I'm going to slightly describe it. It's an alien room. There's probably really cool stuff in there that you can't see, but is it important to this scene?
Right.
No. And maybe you'll
Yep.
see this room again and you'll get to see
Hmm.
more details about it. But, at the end of the day, I think your average reader is not going to sit there and draw a plan and be like, does this make sense?
Right. Yeah. No, I agree with that. And I think that was really helpful for me to hear to remember that I don't have to give the full blueprint of something
But,
in order to then move forward.
but I do think that that's not wasted time
Agreed. Yes, absolutely.
because the reader doesn't need to see the floor plan.
Hmm. But the author should know it.
The author should know the floor plan so that you know, like,
Yes.
so that if nothing else,
Hmm.
to make it so that whenever your character goes from the living room to the bathroom, they're taking a left turn.
Yep, exactly. To have
Yes.
consistency. Yeah. Yeah,
So you can
agreed.
always refer to that, like, which way is the bathroom? Okay.
Hmm.
They're not going to go right into the kitchen and they're going to be in the bathroom suddenly.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. All right. I like talking about these kind of niche writing topics because I enjoy obviously when we talk about like the big sweeping stuff, but these back to basic talks or talks about craft always give me new ideas for my own writing.
Yeah, same here. And also talking about it kind of helps me understand it better in the way it's
Hmm.
utilized, but
Yeah.
also kind of reminded me that I actually know a lot more about setting than I thought I did going into this. Like, I was
You
like,
always
yeah, let's
doubt
talk setting.
yourself. Yeah.
Let's talk about setting. And I was like, I don't know anything about setting. I know that,
Uh-huh.
but apparently I did.
You do. I always had faith in you.
Oh, well, that makes one of us.
I'm Abigail.
And I'm Maddie, and this has been
Two writers.
Many Wrongs.